no grip on the elevator to hang on, very nearly had disastrous consequences when the pilot was able to control. After one large surge, he landed with a very slight whack, still whacked around the technical. Perhaps the aircraft most associated with the Battle of Britain, but it's actually Hurricanes that shot out more German aircraft. One of the reasons there is the Hurricanes, they're not honest, but the Spitfires are generally there to take on the Hurricanes were actually a more stable gun platform and easier to repair because they were an older generation than Spitfire, which Spitfire has a German cannon shell. That shell which would pass straight through the canvas.
Spitfire, the BBM. So you can see the black and white markings on the lead aircraft, the Mark V. Those are the D-Day invasion markings, because on D-Day 77 years ago today, there were so many aircraft in the sky, it was determined that all Allied aircraft would carry those black and white markings to allow any enemy aircraft to be easily identified. Although there was a joke going around in the German army at the time that if the aircraft was camouflaged, it was British. If it was silver, it was American. And if you couldn't see it, it was the Luftwaffe. That's because they had so few aircraft by that stage in the war. So the lead aircraft, the Mark V, was built in 1941 and had an operational frontline career spanning almost 4 years. February 1945, on Valentine's Day, in fact, this Mark V famously flew with an unauthorised passenger. Leading aircraftswoman Margaret Horton, a WAF ground crew fitter, had been sitting on the aircraft tail while it taxied out to take off, which was standard practice at the time, but the pilot, Flight Lieutenant Neil Cox, DFC, didn't realise she was there. He took off with Margaret still sitting on the tailplane. The combination of her weight on the tail and her grip on the elevator as she hung on for dear life very nearly had disastrous consequences, but fortunately the pilot was able to regain control, and one large gentle circuit of the airfield later, he landed, a very frightened WAF still wrapped around the tail. This aircraft, AB910, was purchased by Group Captain Alan Wheeler for air racing, placed on the civil register, but after a heavy landing during the King's Cup air race in 1953, she was returned to Vickers Armstrong, refurbished, and subsequently donated to the flight in 1965. The Mark IIA P7350, as I said, used to be the oldest airworthy Spitfire in the world, now the second oldest, and one of only two still flying today to have fought in the Battle of Britain. She's believed to be one of the 14th of 11,989 that were built at the Castle Bromwich factory, and she entered service in August 1940, flying with 266 and then 603 squadrons. In October 1940, she was involved in combat with Messerschmitt 109s and forced landed, but was soon repaired and flew again the following month. Apparently, repaired bullet holes can still be seen on its board wall. After April 1942, she was relegated to support duties, which probably helped her to survive the war, and in 1948, she was sold for scrap for the princely sum of, what do you think? Chat amongst yourselves, how much was she sold for scrap for? I'll tell you, £25. Worth millions now on the open market. Fortunately, the purchasers recognised the historical provenance of the aircraft, and it was generously donated to the RAF Museum. Now, a nice plan view of the two. The lead designer at Supermarine was R.J. Mitchell, Reginald Mitchell, and the name that he came up with for the aircraft was the Shrew, but the name Spitfire was chosen. Some say it's because the Supermarine managing director's daughter was renowned to have a bit of a fiery temper. She was renowned as a Spitfire, a bit of a Spitfire, so that was the name that stuck. Supermarine Shrew, can't see it myself. Spitfire, much better. Achtung Shrew, no, Achtung Spitfire, yes, much better, much better. She is a veteran of a number of films, including the epic film The Battle of Britain, and it was after appearing in that film that she was generously presented to the Battle of Britain Award. More than 20,000 Spitfire and Seafires, that was the naval variant, were produced. The aircraft was in production from before the war started, even beyond the war finishing, and the last operational flight by a Spitfire took place in the Far East in 1954. That excludes the BBMF flights, because this is operational as well, isn't it? Although nothing to be fired in. The Spitfire is often regarded as the hero of the Battle of Britain, although the older Hurricane actually shot down more enemy aircraft than the Spitfire, but that was probably because they had different roles. The Hurricanes were there to engage enemy bombers, and the Spitfires were there to take on the enemy fighters. The Hurricane was renowned as being a very stable gun platform and much easier to repair than the Spitfire, because it was from the era of wood covered with fabric. So a cannon shell from an ME-109 could often pass straight through the fuselage and just be repaired with a bit of extra canvas and some aircraft built. In contrast, the aluminium construction of the Spitfire meant that if a cannon shell hit, it would make a big... The Spitfire was highly regarded not only by the RAF pilots but also by their opposition. It is reported that when famous Luftwaffe ace Adolf Galland was asked by the head of the Luftwaffe, Hermann Göring, what did he need for success in the Battle of Britain, Galland replied, "Give me a squadron of Spitfires." So the pilots flying the BBMF aircraft are often instructors on the Typhoon at Collingsby or on the simulator. And they do all this in their spare time for no additional pay. But you would, wouldn't you, if you had the chance? The only full-time role on the BBMF is the Flight's Commanding Officer. And if you're ever up in Lincolnshire, do look up the flights at Collingsby, because hangar tours are available during the Spitfire wreck in Russia. And after what he termed several days of interesting negotiations with some interesting characters, he was able to acquire it and bring it to the UK, where it was sold to Angela Soper originally. Now here we are, the Russian Spitfire. It was October 1944 that she was shipped to Russia, and May 1945, so after VE Day, May the 18th, that she actually crashed on the Kola Peninsula, having completed a total of 18 hours of 29 minutes of flying time. Much of what the Russian Air Force did was ground attack rather than dogfighting. And so operationally the Spitfire was fitted with two 250-pound bombs.
That's what I took it.
The aircraft's pilot, Lieutenant Grigory Vasilievich Semyonov, successfully bailed out. So it's interesting to note that it was 1997 that the aircraft came to the UK, and only now has the restoration been completed after the aircraft changed hands. Peter has actually owned the aircraft wreck since 2003, so had it in the Hangar 11 collection as a bunch of bits, but quite a lot of the aircraft is restored from original materials, albeit the engine is a new one that was sourced by Peter Monk, who originally found it. You know, Peter Monk, who runs the Biggin Hill Heritage Hangar. Apparently the Arctic tundra had even preserved some of the Spitfire's original. Love the sound of that engine, the Rolls-Royce Merlin 66, which Peter Monk sourced as part of the restoration. Upon the completion of the restoration, she had her first test flight in October last year, but obviously only now has there been the opportunity for its first public display. There, see on the surfaces. Pre-lockdown, Peter had taken a bit of a back seat as far as display flying was concerned. I think that's one of the reasons why he sold the P40 and the Hurricane. The Hurricane, which in fact went to Hawker Restorations and has become the world's only two-seat dual-control Hurricane. Doing a lot more displays once more displays become available, playing with his newly restored Russian Spitfire.
5.6.
If you're ever down in Kent, tours of the Biggin Hill Heritage Hangar are available, or certainly outside of lockdown, again, check now to see what is available. But that's a fine collection of Second World War aircraft, including some a measure swivel too.